Well, it's been quite a day. Joining us on the program tonight, we have Professor S. Irfan Habib, who's here in the studio with us, author and historian. Pawan Verma, author and diplomat, who also translated Mr. Vajpayee's poems into English that was published some time ago. Swapan Das Gupta is joining us tonight. Sudhindra Kulkarni was an aide to Mr. Vajpayee when he was Prime Minister and is now a writer and commentator. And Akar Patel joins us tonight from Bangalore. Let's talk about, first, Swapan Das Gupta, what makes Mr. Vajpayee such a popular leader across political lines even today? Anybody you speak to in this country, from any political party, any age group, there's a lot of respect for him even today, more than 10 years after he gave up office. What explains it?
Well, Mr. Vajpayee was a very convivial person. He had a very genial personality. He was not abrasive. He always liked to see the humorous side of life. He used wit, occasionally sarcasm, to devastating effect. In fact, he was a person who felt that political differences shouldn't shape normal human relationships. But that does not necessarily mean that Mr. Vajpayee was any less of a politician. In fact, I am quite struck by the fact that many of those who are singing paeans to Mr. Vajpayee today and who appreciate, and they certainly do that quite genuinely, his winning of the Bharat Ratna, were also the same ones who in political life resolutely opposed him throughout his career. So we had both facets taken together. And that, I think, is what makes Mr. Vajpayee. And I think it is something we've set a healthy precedent whereby we can actually afford, we can give the Bharat Ratna to a person who doesn't necessarily only come from one wing of the political spectrum. And I think Mr. Vajpayee certainly showed us that in India there are multiple political dimensions, and he represented one strand of thought very forcefully.
Sudhindra Kulkarni, many would say, in fact, taking off from what Swapan Das Gupta said, that in a sense then the Congress really missed an opportunity, the UPA government missed an opportunity. If they had given this Bharat Ratna to Mr. Vajpayee, I think the signal that would have gone out would have been so different. But just recalling your own personal experiences with him, Mr. Kulkarni, tonight, take us through, if you can, some anecdotes of his humor, that sarcasm that Swapan Das Gupta was talking about, that wit, anything you remember that you'd like to share.
I would like to remember Vajpayee ji as a democrat, a consensus builder, a reconciler of differences, someone who was willing to see the truth in the other point of view. He believed that no single party had the monopoly over truth or monopoly over the national interest. So in that sense, he was a true democrat. And this is the reason why he embraced the diversity of Indian society and the diversity of the Indian political system. There was no bitterness in him towards his political opponents. Of course, he was very firm in espousing his own, his own position or the position of his party, but he would do so in a manner that was very persuasive, that admired and respected whatever was good in the opposite point of view. For example, when economic reforms were unveiled by the former Prime Minister Narasimha Rao and Manmohan Singh as his finance minister, Vajpayee ji and the BJP supported these economic reforms. They did not oppose just for the sake of opposing them, because they believed that these were the need of the hour. Several such examples can be given. I would say that one reason why he is popular is because he always rose above the partisan interests of his own party He tried to mainstream and broad base his own party's appeal. Right from the beginning, he was a secular person to the core. You know, he believed that the Indian Muslims, minorities in general, had to be cared for as much as the majority. That was his, and he tried his level best. There were times when he even gently advised the RSS not to play any political role and remain a non-political organization. Not that he was very firm in continuing with his position, but if we take his politics in totality, what we see is a person who was a true democrat, who was a peacemaker, a consensus builder, and which is why he is admired today, long after he has ceased to be in public life.
Pawan Verma, would you say that in a sense he's then the last leader that we've had who's truly been able to take everybody along? I'm not counting Manmohan Singh here. Maybe it's not fair to do that even though he was PM for 10 years because the Congress had its own unique dynamic in terms of leadership and power centers. But was Mr Vajpayee then the last Prime Minister who was able to take so many different political streams on board with him? I mean, you even had parties like the NC, for instance, who were part of his government but who will not be part of Mr Modi's.
Well, Nidhi, there is no doubt that Mr Vajpayee was firmly right of centre. But the greatness of the man was that even from that position, he saw India in its totality. In other words, he was willing to push a certain ideological line without compromising on his firm belief in the plurality and diversity of India. And I think his great historical role as the Prime Minister of the first BJP-led government was to try and push for his goals without compromising that essential fabric of India. I think his historical role was to keep in check elements associated with his own party who wished to transgress into areas of fundamentalism or extremism or counterpanthi thought, which were anathema to Mr Vajpayee. And I can say to you that apart from that, his record as a parliamentarian, over 50 years of contribution to India's parliamentary life, from when it almost began to till when he was Prime Minister, it's a contribution which has very few parallels, both in terms of substance and oratory. That in itself would give him a position among the great pantheons of India's democratic experience as a young republic. Yeah. And I can say to you personally, I have very, very cherished memories. I translated a book called 21 Poems, if your camera can feature. It's not an attempt to promote this book. It was translated many years ago at his request.
21 poems.
And in that book, Nidhi, he wrote with his hand. I don't know if your camera can focus. He wrote with his hand. And this is again the greatness of the man and his humility and modesty is that Pawan has translated my poems and made them more meaningful. And the many interactions I had with him at that time reinforced my great admiration for the man when I was ambassador in Cyprus. In fact, when I was leaving for it, he said, "Aap chaliye, main aata hoon." And 1 year later, he was there on his way to New York. He broke journey there. He spent 2-3 days there. So both for his personality, for his belief in the plurality of India, even though he belonged to the right of centre,
very well put
for
by
his
you.
Contribution to parliamentary life, I believe the UPA itself should have given him the Bharat Ratna.
I think
but
many
even if
people
it's
would say
slightly
that today.
delayed, it's something I fully endorse.
I think it was churlish perhaps of the UPA not to even think about it. Professor Habib, though, let's talk about what we heard L.K. Advani saying there in our story. He said he had a blemishless record as Prime Minister. Let's just take a step back. There's obviously a lot of praise for Mr. Vajpayee today, but would you say it was a blemishless record?
No, I think given the complications of Indian politics and Indian political parties and the sort of positions these political parties have been taking on so many very, very difficult issues. On that count, I don't think we can say that he had really a blemishless term. and which doesn't mean that he's not a deserving candidate for the Bharat Ratna. He's surely, because his career is not just 5 years in government. He had 50 years as a politician, which is absolutely illuminating, and one can always say that a man like him surely deserved. But there were blemishes, which your report also pointed out, where very enigmatically he kept quiet, and his silences, which were so iconic silences, and even when he used to speak, and so silence here, especially in two cases, Gujarat, Ayodhya, etc., which the story pointed out, have not been explained even today. So those issues people actually still remember, and given the persona of Vajpayee, who was, as Pawan Verma and others also pointed out, was a man of the people. You know, he didn't really believe in any discrimination, and which people like me have no reason to doubt that. Of course, he was a different man. And
would you say that he was able to take the minorities along in a way that no other BJP leader has been, and that's a fact?
He succeeded to a great extent, despite the fact that he represented a party which didn't have a very comfortable relationship with the minorities, but he surely managed because of his personality, because of his...
I'm going to take that to Aakar Patel, because Aakar, you've actually been critical, you know, in your recent columns about Mr. Vajpayee and the legacy that he leaves behind, because I read where you were talking about, for instance, Manoj Mitta's book that, you know, said that he actually justified, for instance, in some quotes, the violence that had taken place in Gujarat, the post-Godhra violence that had taken place. But would it be fair to judge him within those narrow parameters, because there is a lot more to Vajpayee than just what happened in Gujarat or something he may have said then? How do you see him?
Well, certainly there's a lot to be said in his favor, and certainly we tend to give these Bharat Ratnas to politicians as lifetime achievement awards. 24 out of 43 Bharat Ratnas have gone to politicians. Only one has gone to an academic so far as I know, P.V. Kane. C.V. Raman is another one. So we shouldn't be churlish about that. Morarji Bhai Desai got the award, I don't know why. Rajiv Gandhi got it, I don't know why. So I think Mr. Vajpayee is fit, given the other people who've got it. But I think any biography of his must begin with the fact that, along with Mr. Advani, very cynically, Mr. Vajpayee picked up an issue which cost 2,500 Indian lives. He said sorry for it, and perhaps we should accept it and move on. But the fact is that they used hatred to build a political party. That they did it successfully redounds to his credit. I don't know whether that should be taken away from a day like this. The other aspect is, I don't think his record was blemishless. He weaponized a covert nuclear program, I don't know to what benefit. It forced Pakistan to weaponize as well, and I think what that has resulted in is a strategic standoff. Today we can no longer take action against Pakistan no matter how much they damage us. Was it wise for him to have done what he did at Pokhran? Did he think it through? I don't think he did. I think he made many mistakes. In Gujarat, I think he revealed, I think, the power structure of the Sangh, and though he wanted to do something, he was forced by within his party not to do it. Should that also be held against him today? I don't think so. I think today is a day when we ought to respect the man for what he has done. What he has not done, we can talk about another day.